What if I told you that one question changed the direction of my entire life? Not a new experience, not a new book, just one question. After spending 7 years studying science, psychology, spirituality, and human behavior, I realized something. Many of the today's biggest problems are not caused by the lack of intelligence, they are caused by a gap in education. And the more I studied, the more I realized that this affects the way we understand ourselves, our mind, and our history, and even the spirituality. That is why I believe education doesn't need to be destroyed, it doesn't need to be removed, it needs to be updated. And today I want to show you why. Hello everyone, my name is Chetna and welcome back to Journey to Enlightenment and Awareness. In the last two videos, I share what happened to me at the age of 18 and why I stayed silent for 7 years. During those 7 years, I wasn't trying to convince anyone, I was trying to understand one simple question. Why do intelligent people look at the same reality and come to completely different conclusions? That question led me into the years of research, and over time, I realized something. This isn't about blaming school, it isn't about blaming teachers, and it isn't about blaming government. Every education system is created to serve the needs of its time. But just like our phone need updates, education also need update as society changes. And today I want to explain why I believe that update is needed. Question 1. Where did I first notice the education gap? I want you to think back to our school days. Imagine opening your history book. Where does the story usually begin? It began with early humans, the Stone Age. Then we learn about the first village civilization, kingdoms, empire, medieval history, and then finally the modern history. This is the layout: the stone history, the medieval history, the medieval, and then the finally modern history. Okay, that is the history most of us grew up learning. Okay, now let me ask you one simple question. If many of us have also heard about Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga, then where does these four yuga fit into the timeline we study in school? That simple question stayed in my mind for years because I realized I had learned two different timelines, but I have never been taught how they connected. And that curiosity completely changed the direction of my journey. Question 2. What did I discover when I compare the two timelines? After looking at the history I learned at school, I become curious. So I started comparing it with the another timeline, the timeline described in Hindu scriptures. According to the modern science, we learn about the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang Theory, the formation of Earth, early humans, Stone Age, civilization, kingdoms, and finally the modern world. But when I studied the scriptures, I found another way of describing time. They speak about four yugas: Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali Yuga. According to this traditional timeline, Kali Yuga began after Lord Krishna leaves the earth, and King Parikshit is traditionally described as the first king of that age. As I continue comparing both the timeline, I noticed something that surprised me. In the history book I studied, I couldn't find the king or the kingdoms of Satyuga, Treta Yuga, or Dwapar Yuga being taught as the part of history. Most of the historical rulers we study later belong to the period that in traditional Hindu timeline are understood to be within the Kali Yuga period. That made me stop and think, if that is true, then maybe the question is not which timeline is right, maybe the better question is, why are those timelines almost never studied together? That single question completely changed the direction of my research. देखो, बात बहुत सिंपल है. हम जब अपनी हिस्ट्री की नोटबुक खोलेंगे तो सबसे पहले हम उसमें क्या पढ़ते हैं? स्टोन एज पढ़ा, फिर मेडिवल हिस्ट्री पढ़ेंगे, फिर सीधा हम आते हैं मॉडर्न हिस्ट्री पे। अभी मैं स्पेसिफिकली मेडिवल हिस्ट्री के बारे में आपको कुछ बताना चाहती हूँ। मेडिवल हिस्ट्री में जितने भी आप राजा और राज्यों के साम्राज्यों के बारे में हमने पढ़ा है, उनमें से एक भी राजा या एक भी साम्राज्य हमने सतयुगा, त्रेता युगा या द्वापर युगा के बारे में से और उसमें से नहीं है। लाइक सतयुग, त्रेता और द्वापर युगा के किसी एक राज्य और साम्राज्य की भी नॉलेज या बात मेडिवल हिस्ट्री में नहीं कही गई है। अगर इसे मैं दूसरे तरीके से बोलना चाहूँ तो सिंपल तरीके से मैं ऐसे और भी बोलना चाहूंगी कि जितने भी, सेकेंड वे ऑफ सेइंग दिस इज, जितने भी राज्य और साम्राज्य, किंग्स और किंगडम्स के बारे में हम एक्चुअली में मेडिवल हिस्ट्री में पढ़ रहे हैं, वो सारे कलयुगा के टाइमलाइन के पीरियड में से पढ़ रहे हैं। लाइक आफ्टर लॉर्ड कृष्णा लेफ्ट द अर्थ, उसके बाद जितने भी राज्य और जितने भी किंगडम्स आए हैं, उसी के बारे में स्पेसिफिकली हम मेडिवल हिस्ट्री में पढ़ रहे हैं। सो सतयुग, त्रेता, द्वापर युगा के किसी भी किंग के बारे में नहीं पढ़ रहे। तो इसको लेके मेरे मन में एक सवाल आया कि अगर आज भी सतयुग, त्रेता और द्वापर युग की इतनी सारी किताबें आज भी मौजूद हैं, इतने सारे मंदिर आज भी मौजूद हैं, इतनी सारी परंपराएं आज भी मौजूद हैं, तो फिर ये सब पढ़ाई क्यों नहीं जा रही है? ये सब एक्चुअली इन सारी बुक्स में क्यों नहीं है? यही से मुझे एक बात बहुत अच्छे से क्लियर हो गई कि गलती किसी व्यक्ति की नहीं है, गलती हमारी खुद की अंडरस्टैंडिंग से आई है। और अंडरस्टैंडिंग कहाँ से आई है? वही सब जो हमने बचपन से लेकर अभी तक पढ़ा है। इसलिए जैसे कि मैंने फर्स्ट वीडियो में बताया था कि जब मैंने मिस्टर एक्स को ये बताया कि लिसन, आई गेन एनलाइटनमेंट, अब जाके मुझे समझ आया कि उनका रिएक्शन इतना हैरान और इतना शॉकिंग, इतना डाउटफुल मेरे ऊपर क्यों था। बिकॉज ऑफ कोर्स जो चीज हम अभी से लेकर बचपन से लेकर अभी तक पढ़ते आए हैं, उसी चीज को हम अपनी एक फिक्स रियलिटी मानने लगते हैं। और यही मेरी लाइफ का सबसे बड़ा टर्निंग पॉइंट था। अब मैंने लोगों को गलत मानना बंद कर दिया। मैंने ये समझना शुरू कर दिया कि शायद उन्हें कभी ये पर्सपेक्टिव सिखाया ही नहीं गया। सी, जस्ट लाइक वी फाइंड द इजिप्शियन आर्टिफैक्ट, ठीक है, हमें इजिप्शियन आर्टिफैक्ट मिले, ये सब उनके डॉक्यूमेंट्स मिले, सो दैट पर्टिकुलर इंफॉर्मेशन गेट इट प्लेस इनटू आवर हिस्ट्री बुक। बट देन इफ वी आर फाइंडिंग Satyuga, Treta Yuga and Dwapar Yuga's related artifacts, book, temples, then why aren't they in the history book at the very first place? उन्हें उनकी जगह हिस्ट्री की बुक में या एजुकेशन की बुक में क्यों नहीं मिली? That's lead me to another question. Question 3. Why aren't we taught both perspectives? After asking myself that question, I started learning about something I have never explored before, the history of our education system. And what I found surprised me. During British rule, Lord Thomas Babington Macaulay proposed a new education system for India. Its main purpose was to prepare people for administrative and clerical work under the British government. मतलब कि सिर्फ इन जॉब्स को करने के लिए बनाया हुआ एजुकेशन सिस्टम. So it focused on reading, writing, mathematics, language and the knowledge needed for these jobs. For the need of that time, this education system served its purpose. And I don't believe in blaming the past. Every generation makes decisions based on the need of its time. But today, our world is very different. Today, millions of people are searching for peace. They are searching for better mental health. They are searching for focus, for self-awareness, for emotional balance, for purpose, for meditation, and for answers about consciousness. These are some of the biggest conversations happening across the world today. As a blogger also, I noticed that more and more people were asking these questions, and these became some of my most requested topic I wrote about. So I asked myself another question. If these questions matter so much today, shouldn't education also grow to help us understand them? Just like we update our phones, just like we update technology, just like science keep discovering new things, maybe education also deserve an update. Not because the old system was bad, but because today's generation is facing challenges that are different from those of 200 years ago. This is not about removing science. This is not about removing history. It is not about replacing modern education. It is about expanding it. It is about bringing together the knowledge that has been kept separated for a long time. Because when knowledge comes together, understanding grows. And when understanding grows, people stop fighting over ideas and start learning from them. That is the mission behind this channel. Not to create argument, but to build bridges. And that leads me to our next question. Question 4. How this changed the way I see education. The more I studied, the more I realized something important. This was never about choosing one side. It was never about saying science is wrong or saying spirituality is wrong. In fact, I noticed something interesting. Even our school books talk about the Vedic period. Yes, we learn about the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. So our education already tell us that Vedic tradition are part of our history. That made me ask another question. If the Vedic period is already part of what we study, then why do so many people think that anything connected with ancient spiritual tradition must automatically be imaginary? I realized that many arguments begin because people only know one part of the picture. If someone has only studied modern textbook, they naturally see the world through that lens. If someone has only studied spiritual book, they naturally see the world through another lens. Neither person should be attacked for learning what they were taught. Unfortunately, that is not what we often see today. Instead of asking question, many people immediately start attacking each other. Some people make fun of spirituality without even reading the scriptures, and others reject science without trying to understand it. Sometimes even saints or ordinary people who share their spiritual experiences are laughed at, made fun of, and are called fake. Talking about the genuine ones, okay? So please keep that discernment, like the Premanand Maharaj, Dhirendra Krishna Shastri, Brahma Kumari, Rajan Maharaj, and so yeah. But let's come to the main point. I understand why this all happened. If someone has only been exposed to one way of understanding the world, then anything outside that framework can naturally sound strange. That doesn't make that person bad, it simply shows the limit of what they have had the opportunity to learn. And this is what I mean by an education gap. An education gap doesn't mean our education is wrong, it means our education is incomplete. When we only learn about one perspective, we naturally think that every other perspective must be false. But the world is much bigger than any one book, any one subject, or any one system of knowledge. That is why I spent 7 years studying science, psychology, human behavior, and spiritual literature all together. Not because I wanted to prove one side right, but because I wanted to understand the complete picture before forming my own conclusions. And I believe that if more people had the opportunity to explore different perspectives with curiosity instead of fear, many unnecessary arguments would naturally disappear. सिंपल शब्दों में बोलूं तो जैसे इतने सारे लोग लड़ते हैं आपस में ऑन दीज टॉपिक, अगर सबको बुक पकड़ा दी जाए कि लो रीड एवरी पॉसिबल विजडम इन दिस वर्ल्ड, 95% ऑफ द प्रॉब्लम विल सॉल्व. क्यों? बिकॉज कंफ्यूजन जन्म ही तब लेती है जब हम सबको कुछ क्लियरली नहीं पता होता है, वहां पे कंफ्यूजन होती है. और इसलिए फाइट का मेजर रीजन अकॉर्डिंग टू मी इज द लैक ऑफ नॉलेज. एंड दैट लीड अस टू आवर नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन. Question 5. Why do I think education needs an update? At this point, you might be wondering, why does all this matter? Because this conversation is not just about history. It's about how we live our life today. And one tradition story from Vishnu Puran have always stayed with me. In that story, the demon Hagriv steal the Vedas and hide them. The message is simple. If the God became powerful through divine knowledge, then if human being also gain that same knowledge, wisdom and self-understanding, they too would become far more powerful than the forces of darkness. That is why the Vedas were hidden from people by that demon. If this topic interests you, I highly recommend watching the Vishnu Puran TV series produced by B.R. Chopra and directed by Ravi Chopra. The Hegri story is beautifully presented there and is worth watching. Whether you see the story as history or symbolism or philosophy, I think its message is powerful. Knowledge makes human beings stronger. Not stronger through physical power, but through wisdom, self-control, and clear thinking. That is exactly why I believe education matters so much. I'm not talking about education only to learn facts, pass exam, or get a job. Real education should also help us become better human beings. It should teach us how to understand ourselves, how to manage our emotion, how to stay calm under pressure, how to make wise decisions, and how to avoid becoming controlled by anger, greed, fear, temptation, or endless desires. When I look around today, I see more stress, more anxiety, more loneliness, more broken relationship, more violence, more addiction, more distraction, more people searching for peace but not knowing where to find it. Of course, this problem has many different causes, but I also believe something important is missing: the mastery of self. For thousands of years, many spiritual tradition has developed teaching on self-discipline, awareness, meditation, compassion, and inner balance. Whether some follow those traditions or not, these are life skills that can benefit everyone. This is why I believe these ideas deserve its place in the conversation about education. Not to replace science, not to replace modern education or subjects, but to stand beside them. Because when education teaches us only how to build a career but not how to understand ourselves, something important is left incomplete. This is the education gap I want people to think about. Now let's move to another important question. Question 6. Why I believe Sanatan wisdom still matters. Before I go any further, I want to clear up the one common misunderstanding. The word Sanatan means eternal or timeless. It refers to the principles that are meant for everyone. The word Hindu has a different historical journey. It was originally used by ancient Persians for the people living beyond the Sindhu, the Indus River. And later during British rule, the term Hindu became a common administrative label for many of the people and communities living in India. So Sanatan and Hindu are not the same word and they do not mean the same thing. Sanatan describes timeless principle. The other, the Hindu, is an historical and geographical term that later become associated with religious identity. This is why I don't put Sanatan wisdom into a religious box. I look it as a knowledge that anyone can study and learn from. Also, the wisdom found in these ancient texts was never presented as something only one group of people was allowed to learn. I am simply asking people not to reject useful knowledge just because it comes from a different tradition. If a book contains an idea that can help you become more peaceful, more disciplined, more compassionate, or more aware, then why should we ignore that wisdom simply because of the label on that cover? If a teaching is helping you become wiser, kinder, or more disciplined, then its value belongs to every human being. This is how I choose to see Sanatan, not as a label that divides people, but as a wisdom that can benefit anyone who sincerely wants to learn from it. So take what's helped you become a better human being and leave what doesn't.
When I say education gap, I don't mean only one subject. Students need AI skills, content creation, and digital safety. Education should grow with the world.
AI is changing the world faster than ever. That's why I studied this topic and wrote 2 blogs to help people prepare for the future instead of fearing it.
AI is changing everything. But will it ultimately replace humans? Here are 17 skills that AI cannot replace. Find the links in the description.
Question 7. Who was that famous person who attained enlightenment in Kali Yuga? Now I'm finally answering the question I promised in my last video. But before I answer that question, let me explain one thing. Many people hear the word Kali Yuga, but very few know what it actually means. According to the traditional Hindu timeline, Kali Yuga began after Lord Krishna left the earth. As the time moved forward, many kingdom, empire and well-known historical figures appeared during this Kali Yuga period. Now remember what we discussed earlier in this video? Much of the medieval history we studied in school fall within this broad Kali Yuga timeline. And that brings us back to the question I promised to answer. The famous person who attained enlightenment in Kali Yuga was Gautam Buddha. Yes, many people think Buddha belonged to some unimaginably ancient world, but he lived during Kali Yuga. His life reminds us that enlightenment is not limited to one particular age or era. And Buddha was not only the one. Throughout history, many saints and enlightened people have discovered and have described similar experiences. Just a matter of fact whether they want to announce it publicly or not. This is why I never see enlightenment as something exceptional or overly dramatically magical. Question 8. What is enlightenment? To me, enlightenment simply means seeing things more clearly. Imagine walking into a dark room where there is no light. Everything looks confusing. You bumped into things, you misunderstand what is in front of you. But the moment the light is switched on, nothing outside has changed. Only your ability to see has changed. That is exactly what enlightenment means to me. It is the light of awareness. When the light grows stronger, fear becomes weaker, confusion becomes weaker, and illusion becomes weaker. And you begin to understand yourself, your mind, and your life much more clearly. That is all I've experienced. And I'm simply sharing what I've spent last 7 years studying and trying to understand. Whether you agree with me or not is completely your choice. But this journey is exactly why I believe education needs an update. Not because the old education system was bad, but because it served the needs of its time. And now it is time that education teach us not only how to build a successful career, but also how to build a peaceful mind, because both are equally important. So one more thing I want to share with you is that I belong to India. So naturally, if I ever get the opportunity to contribute to education, I want to begin here. Over the years, I have spent a lot of time thinking about what an updated education system could look like, what subjects should be added, what kind of people should work together to build it, and how we can bring together the best of science, psychology, and ancient wisdom and modern education to help future generations. But my vision has never been limited to one country. I want to help build an education system that starts in India and one day reaches learners across the world. And this is only the beginning. In the next video, we are going to explore one of the biggest questions people ask around the world. What does it really mean when scriptures say that we are divine beings? Is it simply a belief, or is there a deeper explanation behind those words? Together we are going to explore different perspectives, gonna ask different questions, and gonna understand why this idea has continued to inspire people for thousands of years. If that sounds interesting to you, then you are in the right place. So if you found this video thoughtful or valuable, then don't forget to like it, share it with someone who loves learning and asking questions, and subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. Until then, stay curious, keep asking questions, because every answer begins with a question, and sometimes one question changes the direction of your entire life. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.